Bodie,
Here.
Carberry Montgomery,
Here.
Kroll,
Here.
McBurney,
Here.
Rosendahl.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Kroll, second by, I'll take McBurney for a second. Roll call, please.
Kroll,
Yes.
McBurney,
Yes.
Bodie,
Yes.
Carberry Montgomery,
Yes.
Rosendahl.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That passes. Moving on then to our one agenda item, and that is to discuss the city manager recruitment planning and with MGT Impact Solutions, our consultant, and who's going to start us off? I'll turn it over to whoever's going to start us off.
Well, there are two of us here, Charlene Stevens and myself. My name is Mark Peterson. I got to tell you, I mentioned to Aaron,
All right.
this is a first for me where I've participated in a council meeting at a client city hall and there's no council in the room. So at any rate, it'll work just fine. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Charlene, I'm going to let you make some opening comments and then I'll follow you up, okay?
Yeah, sure. I'm very nice to meet you, Mayor and Council. I'm Charlene Stevens. I'm a Vice President for Human Capital for MGT. Mark and I are going to be working on this recruitment. Just a little bit of background. Our firm originally started as GovHR. It's been around for over a decade. At the end of last year, we formally combined with MGT, which is based out of Tampa, Florida, although Mark and I are both based here in the Midwest. I'm based in the Twin Cities. I've been with the firm full-time since 2019, and I started leading our recruitment services over a year ago and have worked on a number of recruitments, as has Mark. We're both former city administrators, city managers. I spent part of my career in Minnesota, and I'm based out of the Twin Cities metro. And so we're very much looking forward to working with you on this. And Mark is going to be the main project lead on this recruitment, and I'll be supporting him. And I'll let Mark kind of give you his background.
Thank you, Charlene. Delighted to be here in Urbandale. I kind of hail from this part of the country, even though I live in Illinois currently, was a city manager for a number of years in Illinois before retiring in 2018. I'm originally from Iowa, was born in Ottumwa, and then spent some years in Oskaloosa. And then my father, who was with the phone company, was transferred to the Des Moines area, and my family landed in Ankeny. So I graduated from Ankeny High School. That's back when Ankeny was a little small bedroom community with only one high school. It's changed a lot since then. So I'm pretty familiar with the region. I've done some recruiting work here in the Des Moines area with some other communities, and I'm just delighted to be able to be part of this team and to assist all of you in what is likely to be one of the most important decisions that you make. And fortunately, you don't have to make it too often, as that's the appointment of a new city manager to replace AJ, who's retiring after a very long and successful career. So we're delighted to be here. We're going to talk about several things today. We're going to solicit your input on some things. We're going to start with the schedule, which really sort of also gives you a glimpse into the process that we recommend. But you'll notice that schedule that you should all have received a copy of, and we're going to put that schedule up on the screen if we could, Nicole. It says it's a draft, and I want to emphasize, this is a draft schedule. This is a draft process. This is ultimately your process. We're here to help facilitate that process. We are here to provide you with guidance and expert advice, based upon not only our collective years of experience as municipal management practitioners, but also a number of years in the professional recruiting business. But at the end of the day, you all are driving the bus. and you are the ones that are making the decisions. If there's a direction you want to go, you want to have some elements to the process that we don't necessarily have in this document, we are happy to accommodate your desires. Again, you're the ones making the decision. You're the ones that are ultimately accountable for that decision, not us. So as long as it's legal and ethical, we will accommodate your wishes. However, we will, if we feel that maybe you're moving in a direction that may not be the right direction, we owe it to you to speak up and sort of share with you our thoughts and be candid. But at the end of the day, this is your process, and we will do everything we can to accommodate your wishes, and we all ultimately want a successful outcome. So with that little bit of introduction, I'd like to talk about the schedule a little bit. I don't focus too much on the dates, although it gives us a sense of how this process is going to proceed. And it is about a 14 to 15 week process, and that's what I think we included in our original proposal. You will see as we walk through this, we've tried to move pretty quickly on the front end. And there's a reason for that, and I'll explain it. But after the kickoff meeting, we're going to engage in stakeholder interviews, which I've already reached out to all of you, and I know some of you have already scheduled meetings, and it will be me and Charlene. She's going to join us if her schedule permits. But we will get everyone scheduled and try to get those taken care of in the next several days. I'll also be reaching out, if it's all right with all of you, to your department directors. I think it's important that the senior staff have an opportunity to provide input. We certainly value their thoughts and their ideas and their impressions on what maybe we need in the organization in terms of leadership. And we'll ultimately report back what we hear from the department directors to you. Not what individual people say, but collectively kind of their overall thoughts. And all of that information then will be reflected in the position announcement, which is the first significant document that we will produce. And you'll notice that we are hoping to have that done on the 10th, which is pretty quick. To get that document done. It's basically the job ad, for lack of a better term. We call it the position announcement. And it is our hope to have the position posted by the 17th of September, which again is moving quickly. The reason for that is there's an event coming up on, I think it starts September 21st. It's the ICMA annual conference, the International City County Management Association annual conference. This year it's going to be held in Pittsburgh. We would love to be able to market this position at the conference. There are lots of potential candidates that we can touch base with. Our firm, MGT, will have a significant presence in Pittsburgh. I know Charlene will be there, and we'll have a number of recruiters, and it's an opportunity for us to interact with lots of professional city managers, city administrators, assistant managers, and so forth. And it would be really helpful to have the position posted so we can start talking to potential candidates and encourage them to apply. So the timing is perfect. We've got to move quickly on the front end, but that's not a problem. We can do that. We're very confident, and then we'll be able to immediately touch base with a very large cadre of potential candidates at the ICMA conference in Pittsburgh. So that's the explanation for that. So once we post the position, and we're showing that on the 17th, we will follow up fairly quickly with a recruitment brochure. And I'll work with your staff on putting that together. But that's more of kind of a marketing piece for the position. It's a larger document, so we can provide a lot more information about the position and the community and the organization. But it's also an opportunity for us to sort of showcase the city of Urbandale and sort of sell the sizzle. And there's a lot of sizzle to sell. And so that will come shortly after the position announcement. And then we'll begin using that as another tool to attract candidates. This schedule assumes the application deadline is October 21st. That gives us roughly 30 days for interested parties to submit their application materials, which is kind of standard. We think that's enough. I hate to shorten it too much. Frankly, we do lose a few people. I think 30 days is the sweet spot. And that, frankly, that's based upon many years of recruiting experience with our firm. Once the application period closes, then Charlene and I and our team, and we have a team of others that are working behind us that you don't necessarily see but are very engaged in the project. We will begin our due diligence and a comprehensive review of all of the application materials submitted. We will probably begin to focus our attention on those candidates that we judge to be those that are most qualified, those that seem to match most closely what you all told us up front you're looking for. And that takes us about 2 weeks. Many of those candidates we will interview ourselves over a virtual platform like Zoom or Teams or WebEx, and get to know them if we don't already know them, do a little initial background checking, and then we can go to the next page on that. And then we show the candidate presentation meeting, on November 7th. So I guess, do I control that? I did. Oh, there we go. You just scroll down. Thank you. On November 7th, and again, that date may move a little bit, just so you know, don't get too hung up on that. We'll want to make sure everybody is available for that meeting, and that will be here in the city of Urbandale in closed session, because we're talking about individual candidates. And we will spend probably maybe a couple of hours going through the applicant pool, but certainly focusing on those candidates that we feel are the strongest and those that best match your expectations and preferences. Once we get through that meeting, then we'll have some choices to make. We can begin to bring people in for in-person interviews, or we can do some virtual interviews if you want to have a larger group. And that's a question we don't need to answer today, but that is something we will talk about down the road, how you want to proceed. But ultimately, it will be your job to whittle the group down to a manageable number that we can invite to Urbandale, and you can meet, and they can have a chance to meet you and the team and the community. And once in that, we're looking at that sometime in mid-November, 18th through the 22nd. We're kind of bumping up against holiday season. I think Thanksgiving this year's on the 28th, I believe. So we're good, but we want to get as much of this wrapped up before Thanksgiving as possible. Once you get into the holidays, everybody's schedule gets chaotic. So we hope to wrap up before Thanksgiving, make a decision, make an offer, and then there's usually a short period of negotiating the details of the offer. And then we show sometime in early December where the city council actually affirms their decision, makes an appointment, approves an employment agreement. And typically anymore, a candidate, particularly those that are gainfully employed, are going to give at least 30 days to their current employer. So you're looking at having somebody probably in the seat mid to late January, I would say, is probably likely. So that's a run through of the schedule, and it kind of also sort of shares the details of the process. Let me do two things. I want to ask Charlene if I missed anything or if she has something that she wants to point out that I didn't cover, and then we'll go to all of you and see if you have any feedback.
No, I think you covered it very well, Mark. Thank you.
So any thoughts that you have on the schedule or the process?
This is Pat. I do have kind of a process question.
Okay.
Which is I think there was, and forgive me if I'm wrong, just correct me, folks, but I thought there was a bit of a consensus that we're kind of thinking this is a largely regional, Midwest-based search. And I certainly would not want to ignore this ICMA meeting on September 21. But I'm just wondering, as part of the process, is there anything that we'll be doing to kind of stress our interest in someone with some Midwest-based experience?
Yeah, I
Great.
can maybe
Go ahead,
jump in,
Charlene.
Mark, and then you can.
Sure.
Absolutely. I mean, we can focus on those candidates. We do a lot of personal and direct outreach, and so we would, start with our outreach and looking at candidates that are based in the Midwest and have that Midwest connection. One of the things I always want to say, I always do share though, is I think that advertising nationally, there is always value in that, because we like to say you never know who might want to be coming home. Mark mentioned his, Iowa connections. I started my career in Pennsylvania and Kansas, even though I grew up in the upper Midwest and South Dakota, and it took me a while to get back to Minnesota. And so you don't want to miss out on a candidate who might have ties to Iowa and might be looking for that opportunity to come home as well.
Thanks, that sounds great.
I was going to just to add, and
Pat,
Charlene's right
Pat,
on
this is AJ. Just real quickly, Pat. I started in Ohio, went to Minnesota, and came back to Iowa. So,
Yeah. Appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure we were paying attention to that aspect of what we're trying to do, and it sounds like we are.
I might also add, it's a great question. I would suspect, even though we typically advertise nationally, the lion's share of the applicants for this position will be from the Midwest. Now, we will get applications from Texas and Florida and California and New York and all sorts of places, but I would venture to guess, based upon my past experience, that probably 60% or more of the applicants will be from the Midwestern states. Other questions or concerns or thoughts?
This is Blake. I was just going to ask about the November 8th. So the November 18 to 22, that would be the theoretical in-person or whatever, where we would be talking to folks.
Correct. Now those dates aren't etched in granite. We may try to load them up on it depends on how many. If you're interviewing 3, you could theoretically knock those out in one day, or certainly over 2 days. If you choose to interview 5 or 6, then that's going to take a little more time. But that's the goal, and that assumes that you don't want to do. There's some other things you could do in the intervening parts of the process. So it involves some assumptions, but the short answer is that was sort of our expectation, to be interviewing in that period, because we want to try to wrap as much of this up before Thanksgiving as we can.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then, this is Pat again. Just one more process question, and I promise this will be it from me.
No.
But I noted, the conversations with department heads, which is just great. But what might be part of the process where we kind of hear, again, somewhat collectively, but for more rank and file members of the city staff?
Well, that's, and we're going to cover that a little bit as one of our other discussion points. That's called kind of stakeholder input. And you tell us if you want others involved at the front end, whether that be other city staff members or other community leaders or community groups. There are ways that we can facilitate input from those groups. We can't sit down with each one of them and have a conversation like we're going to do with all of you, of course, but there are some ways that we can do it through surveys or just basically outreach that asks them to submit their thoughts, their ideas, their hopes and desires for this position, if that's something that you would like to do, and then we compile the feedback and then deliver it to all of you in a manageable format. So if that's of interest, and we'll be talking about that under section 4.
Surveys before.
Yeah. Surveys are,
Yep, and we have done surveys in an organization before.
yes.
I mean, if you're looking to get a larger group, of employees input, then and the proposal does include that option, so we can do a survey. And they're typically short, 6, 7 questions, and such that employees have an opportunity to fill out via SurveyMonkey, and we can create that if that's a desire to do that,
Mhm.
and look for the themes.
Well, I'm interested in that, but I don't know about my colleagues.
I think it would be beneficial. This is Bridget, by the way.
I guess I could go either way on that. I feel like it's important to get the feedback of individuals who, of what they want if they interact regularly with the city manager. I think otherwise you might get a lot of unsolicited, unhelpful comments too. So.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer to avoid having a lot of extra static involved in it. So I feel like when you get further down into the organization, it creates a lot of extra noise. Whereas to Amy's point, if we keep this pointed directly towards the people who interact with the city manager more often, our feedback will be more tailored for what we're specifically looking for out of our next city manager.
Well, I don't think we need to get like the tree trimmer and the, park laborers, that probably, rarely come into City Hall. But I think I would like to go below the department heads and get their want or desires or what they think of a city manager skills and a profile of who they think would be a good leader. I think there's a way to work with department heads for them to tell us who it should go to.
I think,
Yeah, I think my term, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Pat, you're finishing the thought.
I was just going to say, I think my term rank and file was perhaps a little misleading. I was thinking a little bit more along the lines of what Bridget just said, that there are players who do engage beyond the department heads, and it would be nice to have some input from them if there's a reasoned way to do it.
In that same vein, it may be helpful with to maybe identify groups outside of the organization that interface with the city manager's office pretty frequently, because then that way we can get some feedback on what would help the community, like some community leaders in that respect. Like how does it that they would best want to see in the city manager's office, and things for us to keep in mind as we go through the process.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can accommodate through a survey. I think that we have done similar ones before, and kind of asking either their community member, whether they're employee, but asking kind of the traits they're looking for in terms of leadership, a leadership style, kind of, and then an opportunity, maybe what they see as the top 1 or 2 priorities, for the city manager or for the community. So we can facilitate that. We've got some samples that we've used before that I think have worked well in kind of getting at what you're looking for, and are very simple and easy for individuals to participate in. And we can create that survey, and it can be sent maybe from the city, so that it's so rather than us trying to send it to individuals, it can be sent through the city's contact and such, and all the data comes back to us, so it's anonymous, and so people can feel comfortable in that.
Is that something you're interested in us pursuing with your staff? Or I know some of you are. Any opposition to that, just so we're getting clear direction from the majority?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Same.
All right.
AJ, would you think the department heads could help facilitate like who the survey should go to? Like, or how would we figure that list out?
I think the directors would have good knowledge of that. You know, obviously in our organization, as small as we are, my contacts go down 2 levels, 3 levels. You know, I have, you know, mostly contacted the directors, obviously, who are my reports, but, you know, I have in this building, for example, you know, everybody in the finance department, everybody in the engineering department, everybody in community development, everybody in the administrative wing. You know, that's not all of us, but again, as it gets out further, you know, police department through their command staff, fire through their command staff, public works through, you know, the directors and supervisors there. I have interaction with them. And again, we're small enough that it's going to happen. You know, when you do budget reviews and you sit down with people and you talk about things and you have projects or issues that come up, again, you know, this position is not that insulated, nor should it be. That, you know, you don't have that contact, if nothing more, put names and faces together.
Sounds good. So we can have your help on doing that, AJ.
Yeah, I won't have a separate consulting fee for you, but I'll do it for an ice cream cone. I heard you guys talk about ice cream not too long ago, so I'm cheap. No, I will be happy to help us wherever I can, as I've always said.
Yeah.
We're also cheap, so there you go.
And we will work with Aaron and AJ on that. The only word of caution is for that, what I'll call the second tier. Obviously, department directors are for that second tier. I would suggest we try to define that pretty clearly, so you avoid a situation where one employee saying, "Why didn't I get asked?" You know, my cohort next to me got asked, but they don't care what I think. You know, it's just, then you take what is designed to be a positive and it can, you know, kind of become a negative. But I think if you clearly, like if that survey goes to, you know, people with direct supervisory experience, then that's clear. That's a subset. But so I would just say when we design that or identify that group, hopefully we can define that very clearly, so there's no sort of open interpretation that could cause some acrimony among some employees that didn't get asked and they feel slighted. So, but I think we can work with AJ and Aaron and make sure that hopefully that does not happen. Okay, great. Any other, I'm sorry?
In terms of the community leader input, then, you know, like right off the top of my head, I'm thinking food pantry and like UCAN and some various others that we'd interface pretty frequently with from a city manager perspective.
I'd include like the Urbandale School District, the Waukee School District, the Chamber, yeah.
We would need you to identify those people. If you can identify them, because we don't know them, we will be happy to fashion a survey for that group as well. That might be it'll probably be a little different than what we circulate to the employees. But that's not a problem. We can certainly do that.
So in the schedule, August 29th to September 6th, you have individual stakeholder meetings, and then that includes other stakeholders identified by the city in that list. So are we talking about those yet unidentified folks that we would want you to actually have a meeting with, or are there people, or then I guess are these people is the survey sufficient?
Yeah, I
That's
think.
not a question for you, I guess, more than the rest of I don't know.
Well,
You go, everybody go.
let me just tell you what what we were getting at with that is if there are, a handful of additional stakeholders that you would like us to personally interview, we can do that. If it's, 20 or 30, that's, we would probably have to figure out another way through a survey or something of that nature to solicit that input. Again, we've only got about a week to get the critical stakeholder interviews completed, because that will drive the position announcement. And as I said, we're trying to get that done as quickly as possible here. But that doesn't mean we can't reach out to other stakeholders. Whether we'd get those done, we probably wouldn't have those completed by the 6th, but that doesn't mean their input wouldn't be of value and useful. So when that item on the agenda I think it was under 4, that is, are there any other like critical stakeholders that you want us to interview? Aside from the survey work that we've been talking about here for the last several minutes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, in my mind, I think the other critical stakeholders would be coming in, especially with the chamber and others would come in during the formal interview process in November, not really as much up front. Is that correct, or not?
Well, yeah, certainly that too. We will want a number of potentially, certainly I would say department directors. We strongly encourage that there be a role, that they have a role in the screening process at the end, as well as maybe some of the key stakeholders. You may want some sort of a community panel of that nature. But again, we're just talking now up front as we're trying to figure out what do we want? What are we looking for? Because that's what Charlene and I need from you, is clear feedback on what you want. So we know what we know what we're recruiting, and we can hopefully deliver candidates that align with your expectations. So I think it's important to have some of this input on the front end, but certainly it will also be important on the back end, and that's a conversation we'll have a little later in the process.
I guess I've been thinking about who we would want to hear from at the front end as you're distinguishing it. And I can't think of anyone outside of the organization. But I guess I'd like to hear from my colleagues if you had anyone in mind that was necessary to be a part of the front end in, determining our, offer, I don't know, that's not the right word, but determining what we're looking for in the job announcement and those sorts of things. Deafening silence.
Trying to decide whether I type or just speak. The things I was writing down was food pantry, UCAN, school districts, chamber. I mean, those were the top of my head ones that we were thinking about already. So.
But do you think that they need to help shape the front of the process, or meet with, the finalists? I would be interested in hearing your logic, if you think they should be involved in the front end, because I'm not opposed to it, but.
Yeah, I think, but it's probably not something that is like absolutely critical, but it would be good to have. I feel like it would inform a blind spot if we have any.
I guess I'm of the perspective of, we've hired folks who do this work regularly, who probably have a pretty good understanding of the pieces of the puzzle informed by council. I think we're going to be belaboring the process if we try and reach out to folks I mean, we're trying to get a job description created by September 17th. That's not a lot of time. And I do think those folks' perspectives will come in on the back end and will likely be more valuable at that point than they're going to be in the front end. Because I think we're going to come out with all the same types of qualities and or expectations on the front end that they're going to identify too. My guess is it's going to be pretty consistent across all cities at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with Amy. I get out the point I was trying to make, I guess, as well. So.
Yeah, I think the timeline is such that we could maybe clog up the works if we try and do too much with all of those different groups in advance. Certainly would like to have their input at some point, and I would add maybe a couple of key developers into the mix, as well as the service organizations in the chamber that we've identified. I don't know who those people are, you guys do, but I think one or two developers would be nice to invite in.
Mark Anderson being one, I would think.
Okay. I think I hear you. We will work with your staff and fashion a survey for a certain class of employees to give them an opportunity to provide input. And are you still interested? We could still do a community survey of key leaders. It just wouldn't be an in-person interview. Is that of interest or not? Again, I'm not sure we can have all of that data here before the 17th or before we start drafting a position announcement. That's not to say it's still of value to you as you get an understanding of what the community hopes that you find in the next city manager. So
I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
To have that as not a top, a second tier process.
Okay. And to be fair, I think we all understand, sometimes it's nice to be asked. Sometimes people appreciate the opportunity to have input into the process. But, whether they choose to participate or not, I think it's always good that you make this inclusive. And so I think that's a good idea. Excuse me. Are we okay to move on to the next item? In section 4, Charlene, do you want to?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we also want to talk with you about, and I think it's important, is to understand kind of, the salary range that we want to look at in terms of posting the position. And your staff, Erin and her team, did a great job of pulling together some data that we looked at, and then we have a class and comp group too. Our kind of recommended posting range for the position is 200 to maybe 220,000 or so, and we usually post that as kind of plus or minus with depending on qualifications. But we think that would kind of, based on that information that we have, kind of get you in the ballpark. And typically you're not necessarily going to, you're going to find individuals kind of in the range where your current city manager is, but it gives a little flexibility. And we're giving what we think will get you kind of the candidate you're looking for. And so want to get a little feedback and see if that's a range that you would be comfortable in. And again, as part of our interview process, we always ask candidates what their expected salary is, not necessarily their current salary, but what their expected is. And we do try to verify that they're going to be within the posted range, or if they're going to be above that. We're very candid with candidates about whether we think there's going to be flexibility. And we're very candid with you too, that there are candidates that might be, looking at the position above your posted range. You still have the flexibility to do that, but we'd like to have a position range. I think it's really important to have at least a posted range or a preferred range out there.
And that posted range, is that a consideration of like a base comp perspective, or is
Yeah, that would kind of be the base compensation, and then of course there's benefits, retirement and such. And we typically then say, that's the starting salary range plus or minus, and then give some a sense of the benefits,
that feel high to anyone else? Or maybe it's just me thinking through like what we currently pay, and I'm just wondering if we can move it to like 180 to 210.
Let me weigh in
Or
on
does
that.
it
Can
really
I,
matter
can I
at
just
this
offer,
point?
if you look at the comps in the region, and I'm talking about the Des Moines area region, I think AJ's a little over 230. He's right in the center. I fear that if you go much lower than that, you're going to put yourself at a disadvantage in terms of what the market is. I think that Aaron had pulled together some very current salary data on city managers and city administrators, and I think the middle of the pack was in around 220, 228, and that was Urbandale in terms of population and size was towards the higher end of that group. I think as I recall, the median population size was 28,000, and they're still making, not that far off from where
About
AJ is at.
215, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the median was about 215 in salary.
I'm pulling up the survey that I conducted prior to the city manager performance evaluation a few months ago. So this is data that does not reflect July 1st salary increases for any city managers that we've comped to. You'll see the fourth column over from the left is annual base salary for local, not just geographically local, but then also some cities that aren't local that might be about the same size or demographic makeup as us that we comp to as well, like Bettendorf, for example, and Marion, about the same size, even though they're not in central Iowa around the Des Moines metro. So if you want to kind of compare base salary. And so same for AJ as well, the salary down at the very bottom, the 231, 139, that is not a current, that is as of last fiscal year. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have about that.
Thank you. That's it.
Maybe it's just me. I cannot do that.
You said 2 to 220 was the first pass that you were thinking?
I would say to give yourself some flexibility. I mean, you could be around that, advertising at kind of 210, 225, and if you wanted to be, I wouldn't go below 2 in terms of the starting salary range. I would not recommend going below 200,000. I mean, you can, you have some flexibility in that range, but again, when you look at the median salaries and again, look at the data, and we have a team in our organization that does class and compensation across the country too. Had them kind of look at it, and that was their sense too, is in that, you don't want to go below 2. You could be, 220, 225, in that starting. And again, we typically say plus or minus, so that is depending on qualifications. But you want to be competitive. I mean, I think we're trying to put you in a place where where you're competitive within the marketplace that we see, and looking at the data, both, those communities that, as Aaron mentioned, are in the Des Moines metro and some that are not in the Des Moines metro, but are very comparable in terms of the size, the scale, the scope that your city is.
I feel comfortable with the 200 to 225 or 210 to 225 as a number to go in the job posting.
This document's in the OneDrive too, guys, so I know you're having trouble seeing it on the screen, but it's located within the OneDrive that Aaron put up.
Yeah, I mean, based on what I was reviewing within that document earlier today, I agree with the recommendation of starting off at, starting that range at 200,000 and doing the 200, 220.
That's fine with me.
Mm-hmm. Same here.
Thanks for the
I
clarification.
definitely would defer to the expertise here of the people we've hired to do this.
Yeah,
It's ultimately negotiable, but it gives candidates a realistic expectation. And we start to set some realistic expectations, and then we have the opportunity to talk to candidates too. And then certainly, based upon the candidate pool and selection and such, you have the ability to negotiate that, but we want to give you a sense and kind of create a marketplace and be within a realistic marketplace and not be below the market, certainly.
I'm sensing general agreement with that range. And again, we'll put that in the position announcement, so you'll kind of have another bite at the apple, but we'll proceed with that range. And then if you decide you want to discuss it further, we can have that conversation.
Yep.
And then a couple other things that we wanted to touch on, just, we're aware that you do have, that there is in the ordinance a residency requirement. And so that, we would just say to be open-minded about that, maybe in terms of kind of length of time to allow somebody to relocate and such. We do find residence requirements, kind of right now are a bit of a barrier potentially for applicants. And some of that has to do, of course, with interest rates, housing markets, or just in metropolitan areas, the difficulty someone might, perceive in just kind of moving, a shorter distance and such. But we will certainly kind of emphasize, I think, that, residency is strongly preferred and strongly desired in that. And again, maybe, encourage you to kind of leave that a little bit up to negotiation, maybe the timing of that for a potential candidate and structuring that in that way.
I found it, I don't know if it was in the ordinance or the job, I think it was in the ordinance, that there was no, within 6 months or,
right.
And I don't know how long that ordinance has been that way, but if we do have to update it, I think we need to change the language on that. But I guess I feel pretty strongly about a residency requirement, but I would be willing to, discuss it if it's a barrier.
And I think the way you have it, your ordinance maybe gives you that opportunity, or certainly gives some reasonableness to that. And I think we can work with that. I would just, and rather than having a hard and fast relocation within 6 months is required, or relocation within a year is required, because you might want to, again, there might be a candidate that has some reasonableness as to why they aren't able to relocate immediately, but are your preferred candidate, or that you might want to be able to work with in that scenario. I think that many times, as a former city administrator myself, it was my desire to live in the community. I felt that was important. And so I think many times people want to be very engaged. City managers and city administrators want to be very engaged in the community. So it's a preference, but there are just sometimes barriers to that, whether it's kids in high school or some of those things that maybe you don't want to too early diminish the candidate pool.
So is that something where you recommend our listing provide that, like a preference to relocating within the community, and with our goal of having somebody in the community, but the actual timeline being as part of just that negotiation if they end up being the right candidate?
Yeah, that's how I would recommend it. We can state residency is preferred and desired, without putting hard and fast to that, and let that be something that you can negotiate. And we can be clear with candidates that it is part of an ordinance requirement, but there's not a hard and fast timeline per se.
If you feel like you know the language to put in the different, postings, and then I'm comfortable with that.
My only concern is, I know for myself personally, having the city manager within the city limits is a deal breaker for me personally. And I don't want to lead candidates in a direction where they feel like they can point to the job listing and say, oh, well, you said that this was preferred. And, I'm very upfront that I strongly believe that this should be a requirement. Maybe not necessarily, within 2 weeks or, anything insane like that, but within a certain time frame that they need to be within the community. And if we're talking about a potential hire date of right before the Thanksgiving holiday, it could even be within 6 months, because that would allow for a typical school season to be just about out of session, and get them right towards the beginning of summer, which would be kind of an ideal place for folks to be moving.
Yeah, and I think those aren't unreasonable. I think it's again, we can convey all of that, I think, very clearly to candidates, and that's part of the, again, as we talk to candidates, particularly those that aren't going to be in the region and such, we always ask that question are there any concerns with relocation and such, and so we can be very clear with candidates that that's an expectation and understand maybe even their timing in that process too.
Yeah, I think frankly not having a hard and fast time frame in the ordinance probably is our benefit. We can use that and as we craft an employment agreement with someone, we can, the council is the one that would be the one to enforce that anyway. We can, we put that as part of the contract, we can certainly have it.
Yeah, it gives you the ability to kind of work with the candidate on what, and sometimes that's just because you can't anticipate the candidate and what their circumstances might be. Right. There might be a uniqueness to a circumstance or something that really is that anticipate, and so having the flexibility, I think, is wise.
Okay, I think we heard you. We will, throughout this process, by the way, we will be sending you periodic updates. We may not be, having formal engagement, but we'll keep you up to date as to where we are and our progress. And it's our plan, and I think we've talked with Aaron and AJ, probably to use Aaron as our communication conduit, both from us to you and you to us, just to make sure that communication is efficient and that we don't drop the ball on anything. So Aaron has graciously agreed to serve in that role. And so when we send out updates, we'll send them to Aaron and she'll forward them on to you. And if you have questions, unless it's something of great urgency, you can contact us. But ordinarily, go through Aaron and then she'll communicate with us. If you're okay with that, I think that from our perspective, that probably is the best way to go. Does that sound okay? Aaron, you're good with that? Okay. Excellent. We'd like to just talk a little bit about what we're going to discuss with you individually, and we can certainly, hear your thoughts as a group collectively, but for our individual meetings, we're going to really task you with trying to, tell us what you're looking for in the next city manager. Special skills, management style and approach, personal attributes, leadership attributes. These are the kinds of things that we really want to hear from you. And you're the most important group because you're the ones that are making the decision and you're the ones that are accountable for the decision. So we really would like you to think about that, as well as what are some of the key challenges that you see for the next city manager. And I'm thinking mostly short-term challenges in the next year or two. And so we will, part of that, number one, we will build that into the position announcement, but it's also, it's very common that candidates will say, what do they want? They'll call us up and say, I'm interested. What are they looking for? And we like to be able to tell them, this is what they want. These are the priority items that are important to them. And so be thinking about that. Certainly, I don't want to, if anyone wants to offer some things now, we'll be happy to record those. But again, most of that comes in a one-on-one conversation. And then we'll, as part of the position announcement, we'll sort of report back what we heard. And we're looking for some consistency in themes. You may tell us something that doesn't make it in in the final document, because you're the only one who mentioned that, you know, you want somebody who is a good infielder, you know, for the City of Urbandale softball team. Well, that may not make it into the final document, but when we hear multiple things from you, those are the things we're really focused on. And so that's really an important part of the process. I kind of liken it when you go out to buy a car. You usually, you know, when you walk on the lot, you need to have a kind of an idea what you want. You know, you usually don't tell the salesman, I don't know if I want a pickup truck or a sports car. I have no idea. Usually, you know, the type of car, maybe even the color and the features. It's not unlike this. We're out there shopping for that city administrator, city manager for you. So we need to know what is important. And so ultimately, we deliver candidates that fit your expectations. So that's a really important part of the process. And we just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what we'll be talking about so that you can give that some thought in advance. Okay? Any questions or concerns or thoughts that you want to share on that right now?
I would just say, could we get send out a copy of the strat plan, the strat plan and the human services plan, because there's those one-pager kind of action matrix sheets that do a pretty good job of summarizing too. Because then, as part of the individual conversations, we can go into a little deeper dive of that as well.
Yeah, we'll be happy to take a look at those. They're on the website, or if
Sure.
or if
AJ
Aaron
can
send
get
those
those
to us.
to-
And we
yeah.
do a lot of times do in our brochure, even link in our brochures that Mark discussed earlier, put in some hyperlinks to the city's, you know, strategic plan and reference some of those, so that even that candidates can look at that, you know, going forward as well, and give them an insight. All of that is just, part of it is just to help Mark and I get to know your organization a little better and such, and get to know you better and understand and be able to find candidates that we think are going to be a fit, not just on the technical side, but on that kind of softer skill side, that leadership side, and kind of be a fit. Because you'll find that many of the candidates will meet the requirements for the technical side of the role, but that may not make them the best fit for the city of Urbandale, and we want them to be also a fit for the organization and what you're looking for, kind of culturally and fitting with your team.
And we're going to have a sustainability piece that Iowa State students are delivering to us on September 17th, and they've already given us basically one double-sided page of items. That would also be, I think, important to link to the city manager.
Good candidates are going to want to see that information. They're going to want to look at your budget. They're going to look at your strategic plan. They like to look at your comp plan. We get lots of questions about, and documents aren't available. The good candidates call us and ask them, can I get that? Because they're interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them. They want to make sure it's a good fit for them, particularly the good candidates. And that's a good thing. You want them to know what they're getting into. So I always like it when candidates take the initiative and kind of dig into the website and try to find all these documents that help them better understand what Urbandale's all about. And so some of these documents you've suggested will be very helpful to prospective candidates, I would submit. We generally, we like to keep the names confidential. And frankly, we won't share names with you till we get sort of to that candidate presentation meeting on, let's see, I think that was the 7th or roughly of November. But even then, a lot of these folks are gainfully employed, and they're employed in public positions, and it can be uncomfortable if it gets back to them through, you know, unofficial sources or the media that their city, that they're applying for a job. And many candidates will ask us up front, is this confidential? And if we say no, because we do have some clients that publish the names, and we will have prospective candidates who will decline because of that. Now, when we get to the very end of the process and candidates come to the community, that at that point, I tell candidates, you better tell your spouse and your boss because, you start meeting people and it's, the old saying, if one other person knows information, it's no longer a secret. So at that point, they're outed. But that's when we're down to a small number of candidates, and they at that point know that they're under serious consideration. So I just want to throw that out there, and if there's any concerns about that, I'd like to hear those. But hopefully you will do your best to, when you do hear names of candidates, keep those to yourself, because it's kind of hot information. A lot of people want to talk about this stuff, and it doesn't take much to leak that to a local, either on social media or regular media, and we want to avoid that. Fair enough? I see heads nodding.
I don't know if one of our attorneys is on the call or not, but is what you said Bob, you can probably answer. Are we able to do this legally?
Yes.
Waiting to reveal the names till
You're not,
the end?
You're not obligated. Now, the other thing that we, as part of our application packet, we include the form, the Freedom of Information Act form for Iowa, that they sign, essentially a waiver that we can discuss. If we do discuss their candidacy in executive session, they're waiving that. They're allowing us to do that. So we include that right up front. We're very careful to make sure we're in full compliance with the Open Meetings Act and any other transparency regulations in the state of Iowa.
Thank you.
I would like to just close our formal part by saying this is I'm very excited about this recruitment, because this is going to attract a lot of interest. I believe that it will, for a variety of reasons. Urbandale is a great community in a fabulous region of the state and the country. The fact that you've got stability, AJ has been here as long as he has, is a good thing, because there are lots of communities that can't, they go through city managers quite rapidly. And so good candidates are going to see that stability as a very positive thing. And they will get online and they will watch council meetings, and they will see how you all interact. And from what I've seen, you're professional and collegial, and you work well together. That's all very, very positive. So I'm quite optimistic that we will attract some really good talent to this position. I'm also realistic to know it's a very competitive environment out there. It's really, they're compared to what things were 10 or 15 years ago, there are just not that many good candidates out there right now. So we'll have to work hard to attract the best and the brightest. And I think we can. You're giving us the raw material that will make it easier for us to go out and sell this to really good candidates. And I know we're really excited about having this position to showcase at the ICMA conference in Pittsburgh later in September. That really will be wonderful. But I'm optimistic that and I think Charlene shares my optimism that we'll find some really good people for you.
Yeah, I think as Mark said, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say necessarily that there aren't good candidates. I think that it is very much a candidates market. So what we've seen kind of over the last 5 or 6 years is just that the profession has had a lot of retirements and a lot of more individuals that are leaving the profession than that are coming into the profession. And so where we might have said, 4 or 5 years ago, we'd anticipate 60-some applicants or more for this position. We might see more around the 35, 40 applicants. And then our goal is to kind of narrow that down to maybe 8 to 10 that really kind of suit the needs and fit well with what you tell us you're looking for. And then, you know, from there, kind of narrow it down further to that 4 to 6 semifinalists and hopefully 2 to 3 that you can bring in and feel very comfortable with. And that's why I think, you know, in terms of marketing the position, in terms of the requirements, in terms of salary, is just to be as competitive as possible and not to create kind of unnecessary early barriers or obstacles for individuals to apply in the process, because it, you know, just all you have to do is look at the postings that are in the ICMA newsletter and such. There's just a number of vacancies, and it is much more, you know, for candidates have the ability to be very choosy in the process right now. And so putting your best foot forward, and I think that's very much what you're doing. And I do think that the Des Moines region is a very, very attractive region, and the community itself of Urbandale is very attractive. So I think it will draw a strong, you know, even with what we're seeing in the marketplace, I still think it will draw a very strong applicant pool. And Mark and I have both worked in Upper Midwest. We have between us of our most all of the firm's recruitments in Iowa, so we have a good sense of the market in the state and candidates, as well as our networks. And so we're very excited to be working with you on this recruitment.
Questions that you have, or concerns or thoughts that you want to share with us up front? Is there anything we didn't cover that you would like us to talk about?
I guess the only thing that I would like to see, and I think some of this has been in emails from Aaron and in the other materials that you provided, but you know, we had, like you said, to kind of put a hold on the week before Thanksgiving for those potential in-person visits. There was like another date in November for a meeting. If there's any of those dates that we could get like emailed just with that information to, you know, put a heads up on our calendar, I'd really appreciate that.
Great suggestion. We'll do that.
Absolutely.
Through Aaron, we'll send out, you know, 4 or 5 key dates that you want to block off on your calendar. You know, again, their circumstances can change and those dates could change, but our goal is, that's why we put a schedule together, because we want to try to hit those marks if we can. That's a great suggestion.
I guess the only question or concern that I have is, what is your experience posting positions where there is already currently somebody that serves as like the assistant city manager role who is interested in pursuing the city manager role?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is we encourage internal applicants, and we also treat internal applicants the same in the process. And so just recommend that they go through the same process and are given, you know, we give them every opportunity to be successful. We'll also be candid with you in terms of where we see the strengths of the candidates and any areas or opportunities they might have in that process as well. Certainly, sometimes having a known internal candidate might discourage other applicants in the process, but we are but I think the fact that you're doing an open search also encourages applicants in that process, and showing that you are open-minded to candidates throughout the process is important.
Thank you.
Just want to say thank you for the work that you've already done, and I look forward to working with you all as we move forward in this process.
Well, we do as well. We look
Thank
forward
you very
to
much.
meeting with each of you individually. So really appreciate it. And the staff has been just fabulous so far. Your staff has been super responsive, and not AJ so much, but the others. Of course, I'm joking.
Mark, do you have any questions or kind of things for us to think about before our individual meeting that you could send to us?
Yeah, we can send, we do have a kind of a discussion.
We
Kathy.
do. We'll send you.
And so we'll send that to
Yeah.
Aaron and
we covered them in
ask Aaron to
generic
send that
terms.
out. There's a little bit of a kind of.
Yeah, we'll do that. We covered them in generic terms, but we'll send you some specific questions that we'll ask you so you can come prepared. It's an open book
Yeah, formulate
interview,
your
so-
thoughts.
Anything
right.
else?
I guess I have one more question. Who else are you doing interviews with on staff?
I have a list. I don't have it in front of me, but Aaron gave me a list of primarily department directors, just directors that we plan to interview individually, one-on-one. And it's a pretty decent-sized list of folks. But we have not,
So
we
as
haven't
long- I
done
guess
that
I'm
yet.
assuming it's all department heads, Aaron. You can just thumbs up, or I can see you.
Yeah.
Okay,
All department heads, yeah.
great.
Thanks so
All
much.
right. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Mark,
Thank
Charlene, look forward to working with you. So, and make sure you get your individual appointments scheduled. I have mine scheduled for Friday, I think.
Yes, you do.
Let's get those doing and make sure we have we keep on task. So that's important for us to make sure we do our part of the process. So. All right, with that, we are at the end of the agenda for today, so I will adjourn the meeting. Thank